Good morning.
Good morning. Does anybody have anything for the office? Oh. Thank you. All right, so the past few days we've been dealing with the distance formula and looking at 2 points on a coordinate plane and being able to find the distance between them. We did a few that we were able to make a right triangle and find that way using Pythagorean theorem, but then we actually found that the Pythagorean theorem is connected to the distance formula, so we were able to find the distance between 2 points. We also then used the distance formula in what we knew about perpendicular to find the distance between a point and a line. So we had to find a point on that line because you always need 2 points for the distance formula. So we finished that up yesterday, and now we're going to move on to circles and semicircles. So we're going to look at the equations that create circles and how we actually find out where they are on the coordinate plane. So given below are the equations and graphs of 2 circles. Study the graphs and equations and explain how the graph is related to the equation. So go ahead, take a second, look at this first one, and see what you can relate from the picture to the equation. Tori? Yeah, so the center of the circle is going to be 3, 4. So the x value, switch the sign, you get 3. Take the y value, switch the sign, you get -4. So 3, -4. That's your center point. Okay, so we figured out what that means in our equation. Maybe how do we get the 16? Where did that come from? Tori?
I don't know if this has to do with anything, but it's 4 units up, right, left, and down from that point.
That's called what on a circle? You're correct. Radius? Yeah, radius. So the radius is 4. Well, how do we get 16 then? If we have 4 as the radius. How do you think we can get that?
2 pi r equals circumference?
No, how do we get from 4 to 16?
Well, if you got, yeah, if you square it, that would be the diameter was written.
If you square it, we just get the value. So we're just seeing how the picture relates to the equation. How can we get 16? Well, from our picture, we see the radius is 4. If we square 4, that's what we plug into our equation for a circle, okay? So 4 squared, you get 16. So that's where the values are coming from. That's how they get the values in the equation. So let's take a look at the next one. If you look over here, our center point of this circle is what? Before we even look at the equation, just look at your picture. What is it? It is 0, -2. Well, if you look up here with your x's, what is different about this one when we look at it first? If you look at this one compared to this one. If you look at the 2 equations, what's one thing that's different? Okay, we only see one thing in the parentheses. Why does that maybe make sense with what our point is, though? Yeah, we're going to have that 0. What's something else that looks a little different, though? Tori? Yeah, the 2. Can we divide 2 on all sides, though? Yeah, we can divide off the 2, so we could get x squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 18. Now it looks more similar to the formula on the other one because we got rid of the 2. So we have x squared plus the quantity of y plus 2 squared equals 18. So this is our x comma y. This is our center. So we're saying the y value is -2, so we should have a y plus 2. Well, we do have a y plus 2. We're saying the x value is 0, so we should have an x minus 0 squared. Well, x minus 0 is just x, and then x squared. So this side of the formula is correct. And if we look down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, a little bit more than 4. So right here would be 4, right here is 5. What is 4 squared? 16. What's 5 squared? 25. Is 18 in between those? Yeah, so it makes sense that our radius squared, we don't know exactly what that value in there is, but whatever that value is squared is 18. That value, though, would be represented by the square root of 18, whatever the square root of 18 is that value. The radius of that circle would be the square root of 18. Alright, so given the equation of the circle, how might you find the center and the radius of the circle? So we've really already talked about that, but we would have the equation x plus h squared plus y plus k squared equals r for the radius squared. So that's what we figured out up above. The number over here is whatever the radius is squared. The h is the x value from your point, the k is the y value from your point. So we've already shown this, but to find the center, and I think Tori mentioned this, you take the opposite of the value. So you would take negative h and negative k, and that's how you find your center. Take the opposite of the values in the parentheses. And the radius, which we already talked about again, you take the square root of the r squared, which just gives you r. So referring back to the first problem, if you take the square root of r squared, well, r squared is 16. The square root of 16 is 4. Well, that gives you r. R was 4. Are we okay up to this point? We need to recap anything or go back over? Alright. So now, if given the equation of a circle, sketch a graph. If given the graph of a circle, find its equation in the center radius form. So what we're talking about right now, this equation we've been using, this is what's called center radius form. And we'll talk about that a little bit more on the back of this page, but that's what they're referring this to, as the center radius form. So in this one, we're given the formula. Where would the center of my circle be? We're given the formula. Where is the center? Yeah, you take the opposite of the x, so we know we're going over to 3. And then what's the value with the y? Well, it's just 0. There's nothing there, so 3, 0. That's the center. Now, how do we find the radius so we can draw our circle? How do we find the radius so we can draw the circle? Yeah, you take the r squared over here, take the square root of it. Square root of 25 is 5. So we go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we know our radius is going to go out 5 on all directions, and then just try your best to draw a circle. It's not going to be perfect. We're not all artists, but try your best to draw the circle. So the center was 3, 0. The radius is 5. Alright, let's try the next one over here. This one, they give you the circle, but they do not give you the equation. So we need to figure out what the center is and what the radius is. So, what is the center? Who can tell me what the center is? 3? 3, -1. That is your center. What about the radius? Who has the radius? Radius is 4. Is that enough information to create our equation now? Yeah, so we're going to start with x. We know we have x, and it should be x what? Ashley?
-3/6. squared.
Minus 3, and then the whole quantity squared, good. Plus y what? What should we do with the y?
Plus 1.
We should have plus 1, remember it's the opposite sign, square it. Equal to,
16.
yeah, I heard it out there, 16. You take the radius and you square it. So that is finding the formula for that circle. You need to know where the center is and you need to know the radius. Do you think you could try the next two on your own, or do we want to go through them together? All right. On the fourth one here, remember those are 2's in front. So remember, just like up above, you can subtract those 2's off and then do your work from there. But go ahead and try these two bottom ones on your own, just like we did the top two, and then we'll check our answers. Find your center, find your radius. All right, I see a few of you still working. I see most of you finished. Let's go ahead and check the answer for the first one. So we know we're doing the equation, but what is my center point? Marie? -1, -3. So if you want to write that, it's -1, -3 for the center. So that becomes a 1 and a 3. Very good. And the radius is what? What is the radius? 3. So this has to be radius squared, which is 9. So that's the first one. The second one I said you could divide by 2. So if you do, the 2 would cancel, 2 would cancel. Divide that by 2, you get 4. So our center is where? -2, -2. Very good. And then our radius is actually what? 2. You take the square root of 4. So 2, 2, 2, 2, and draw your circle. Very good. All right, if there's no questions, let's go to the back. So we're going to change it up a little bit. We have been talking about the center radius form. So this is what we've been talking about on the front the whole time. The x and the k, get your center point, and the r squared, you can find your radius. But now we're going to incorporate what's called general form. So we're going to have the x squared plus y squared, and then have our plus ax plus by plus c equals 0. If the equation of a circle is not given in the center radius form, so if it's not given in this form, you can perform the process of completing the square to rewrite the equation in center radius form. Find the center and the radius of each of the following circles. So what we're given here, we are given general form. And they're telling us that we have to use completing the square to actually find the center radius form. So when we do the completing the square part, what we're actually going to do is add b divided by 2, that quantity squared, so b over 2 squared, to both sides, and then we would factor, so and factor. So add b over 2 squared to both sides and factor. So what exactly does that mean? Well, let's start this example. So if we put our x's together, x squared plus 10x, we're just moving everything around, plus blank. We don't know what should be there yet because we have to complete the square for that. Plus the y squared now, minus 6y, plus blank, because we have to complete that square. We don't know what it is yet. Equals, well, this positive 4, we're going to subtract it to the other side because there's nowhere for it right now. So we have our x's together on the left, we have our y's together on the left. We need to complete the square of the x's and the y's, and we moved our values, any values we had, to the right side. So if we complete the square for the first one, what would this value in here be? Follow the directions I just gave you. What is b? Rebecca, what is b?
25.
I like your final answer. What is b, though? How did you find 25? If you're just plugging into this formula, what is b?
Oh, sorry. So 10 over 2 squared.
Exactly.
So
So you take your b value, so a would be in front of the x squared, b is here. B divided by 2 is 5, 5 squared, and exactly what Rebecca said, you get 25 here. Okay? So if that's how we get the first one, what is the next one going to be? Somebody I haven't talked to today, maybe. What is the next value going to be?
9.
Yes, 9. Thank you. So you take your b value, negative 6, divide by 2, you get negative 3. Negative 3 squared, this becomes positive 9. Very good. But now it says you add that value to what? Marie? Both sides. Well, we only added on the left, so we need to add a 25 over here and add a 9 over here. We have to add it to both sides. So that's the first step. But it says after you add this to both sides, you do what? We need to try to factor this now. The first, for the x's, that factors to what? X plus 5, x plus 5. The y's factor to what? The y's factor as, Marie? Y minus 3, y minus 3. And if you simplify the other side, you get 30 over here. Now really, a simplified version of this, well, this is just x plus 5 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 30. Are we finally into center radius form now? Yes, so we can now list what they're asking.
Please excuse me, I also need all Keystone Literature students to report to the Audion for their testing. That's all Keystone Literature students to report to the Audion for the Keystone. Thank you and have a great night. Great day. Good night.
I will do everything.
All right, now that we have the center radius form, what is our center of our circle? So pretty much what we were doing on the front of the page now. We're looking at this form. What is the center? -5, +3. And the radius is what? Marie? Yeah, square root of 30. And that's what they're asking for. Now the next one is going to be the same process, but there's going to be some fractions involved. Do you want to go through that one together to see how the fractions are involved in this? All right. So again, for the next one, put your x's together. So x squared, we have a minus 7x, plus, we don't know yet, we need to complete the square, plus y squared, plus 3y, plus, we don't know yet, we have to complete the square for that. And we're going to move that 8 over, so we get positive 8 on the other side. So that's our initial setup. So they gave us general form. We're trying to get it into center radius form. So now if I use the step I gave you up above, when we complete the square for this first one, what value do we get here? Leave it as a fraction. Don't give me a decimal. Okay, it is 7 over 2 squared. If we have a fraction squared, how can we square the fraction though? Square the top and the bottom. So we get 49 over 4. Very good. Now follow those same steps and complete the square for the y values. Your b divided by 2 and square them. What do you get for your y values? Marie? 9 over 4. Okay? We added them to the left. Don't forget, you have to add them to the right. We're okay so far? Alright, so now, like up above, we need to factor. Now, we know since we completed the square, these are going to factor into something squared. So we can really go from this step, we can go straight to this step, because we know whatever that's going to be is the same thing twice. So this one is going to be x what? X plus or minus something squared. Are we going to have a plus or a minus? Let's figure that out first.
Minus because it's 7 is negative.
Yeah, we have a negative here. This is positive, so the negative times a negative will get us a positive last value. But we have the negative in the middle, so we know we're going to have an x minus here. Now, what value goes here?
The 7 over 2.
The 7 over 2, because 7 over 2 times 7 over 2, that would get you that 49 over 4 whenever you expand it. So we have x minus 7 over 2, quantity squared. Very good. For this one, we are going to have y. Are we going to have plus or minus? We're going to have a plus on this one. They're all positive, so we're going to have a plus. And what value goes at the end? Y plus what? If we know this one is 9/4, what does this one have to be? You think about it, whatever this number that has to go here, this is the number that you squared to get this value. So what number did we square to get that value? 3 over 2, exactly. Thank you. 3 over 2. And on the other side, we need to add them all together. So if you get the common denominator of 4 on the 8, and you add all of those together, you would get 90 over 4. But you would have to get the common denominator, so multiply 8 by 4. Okay, and what can we tell from this now? Have we made it to center radius form? Are we there yet? Yes. So now we can find what our center is, and we can find what our radius is. Again, take the opposite values of your x and y. So we get 7 over 2, comma, negative 3 over 2. That's your center. Your radius is the square root of 90 divided by 4. And that can be simplified some. The square root of the fraction, you can do the square root of the top over the square root of the bottom. So the square root of the bottom is just 2 now. And the square root of 90 on the top, we could do, let's see, square root of 90, can that be broken down at all? Sorry, what was that?
9 and 10.
There we go. So the square root of 9 is what? 3 times the square root of 10. So if you simplify, that would be your final answer. 3 times the square root of 10 divided by 2. And that was just by breaking down the square root. Okay, so we've had an example where we just had whole numbers and we were able to plug in completing the square. We had an example where we had fractions with completing the square and we were able to find an answer. On this one, we're going to have a little bit of missing information when we go to solve this one. So let's set it up the same way. But I think first off, what will make this most easy, if we look at the first two, what do we notice about those compared to the third?
X and Y both have the square root of A and B.
Okay, what's in front of the X and the Y? Yeah. So these values in front of there might trip us up a little bit. So since they're both 4, well, we can divide them out. So if you do, that would change your formula to x squared plus y squared. Well, 16 divided by 4 is 4, so you would get plus 4x. And what is 1 divided by 4? You just get 1/4. 0 divided by 4 is 0. So you have a little more simpler equation to work with because we divided off that 4. Now we're going to follow the steps that we did just above. So we have a more simple formula. We're going to use this one right here. Get your x's together. So x squared plus 4x. We don't know what the completing the square part is yet. Y squared. Well, we don't have any other y's. There's nothing else. We just have a y squared. Okay. Equals, and I'm going to add the 1/4 to the other side. If I just have a y squared, I can't complete the square. There's nothing there. So if you think about that, the y squared value is just going to be what? Yeah, it's going to be 0 when we go to find our center point. But we need to complete the square for the x. So again, find your value for completing the square. Follow the step I gave you up above. When you find that, let me know what you get when you completed the square. Anybody find it yet?
4.
Yeah. You get 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared, you get 4. Very good. And then, when we factor, before we go to this step, don't forget, I almost did. We added to the left. Don't forget to add to the right. Okay, on the left, when we factor the x squared plus 4x plus 4, we get what squared? What's the quantity squared? Going to be x something, plus or minus, plus 2. X plus 2 squared plus y squared. You add the 1/4 to the 4, get 17 over 4. So now we can tell what the center and the radius are. Like we talked at the beginning, there was nothing with the y values, so we know y is going to be 0. We take the opposite of the x, so we get -2, 0. Square root of 17 divided by 4. Again, you can break that up like before, so you would just get square root of 17 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Alright, are we okay with that so far? Alright, let's go ahead down to the bottom and figure out what we need to do down there. Alright, in general form, find the equation of each circle that is described below. The center of the circle is the point -1, 4. And a point on the circle is 2, 3. So that's all the information we know at this point. What information do you need to know to be able to find general form eventually? Yeah, we need to know the radius. We know the center, but we don't know the radius. How do you think we can find the radius at this point? Distance formula, yes. So instead of putting d equals, we're going to put r for radius, but it's still going to be the distance between 2 points. And we've got to think back to that distance formula. Remember, we have a square root, and we're going to do 2 points right now. It's your x's, then your y's. So I'm going to start with my x. I have -1 minus the 2, and that's squared. Again, this is the distance formula, so now the y's, 4 minus 3 squared. And now we just reduce and try to solve it. So we get -1 minus 2, you get 3. 3 squared is 9. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 squared, you get 1. So you get square root of 10. So square root of 10 is our what now? Our what? What did we find? Yeah, we have the radius now, so we're good to go. We have our center, we have our radius. We can do what we've been doing the whole time now. We can go back to our center radius form from up above because we have a center and we have a radius, and then we'll expand that to the general form. So x plus 1, because you take the opposite, and y minus 4, because that's from our center value. Again, we took our center point and plugged it in, and then you square your radius. Well, the square root of 10 squared is just 10. So that's center radius form. They want general form, so we have to actually expand that now. So we have to do x plus 1 squared and y minus 4 squared and expand that all out. So if you do x plus 1 times x plus 1, you get x squared plus 2x plus 1. Then we're going to add to it, if you do the y minus 4 squared, you would get y squared minus 8y plus 16 equals 10. And you can't just stop there. Yes, we have it all expanded. We have all the values we need, but you can't stop there. You have to actually make it look like the general form from up above. Put your x squared, then your y squared, then your ax, by, and c. Okay, so just because you have it all expanded doesn't mean you can stop. You still have to put it into the form. So x squared is first, then our y squared, then our ax. Well, ax is the 2x there, so plus 2x minus 8y. And it has to be equal to 0, so you subtract your 10 over and add the 1. You get plus 7. Alright, are we okay with that problem? Any questions about that? Confusions? Alright, let's go ahead and move to the next one then. So a little bit different. little more problem solving here. So the diameter of the circle has endpoints of -1, 4 and 3, -8. So we're talking about the diameter now. So the diameter is twice the what? The radius, twice the radius. So we know if we can find the distance of the diameter, we would be able to find the radius, but we also don't know what at this point. The center. So let's try to find that first, the center of the circle. All right, any ideas how you think we can find the center if we know these 2 points?
Remember how we did, like, finding between maxes and mins?
Yep. So is that what you're saying? Okay, so it is very similar to that. When you're finding like between mins and max, because what you're doing is you're finding the middle point or the average. Well, the middle point in the diameter is the center of the circle. So that's exactly what you need to do. So we're going to start with, and you have to add them up. You have -1 plus 3, divide that by 2, that gives you your x value. We took this -1 plus the 3, divided by 2, that will give you an x value. Same reasoning, 4 plus -8, so that's 4 minus 8, divided by 2, that will give you your y value, 4 minus 8 divided by 2. You can simplify that, and you get what is your center point? Right? 1, -2. So now we have our center. We still need to find the radius. Yes? Yeah, you now know what the center is, and you have 2 points you can choose from, and you can do the distance formula again. I'm going to go ahead and do it on the board. If you want to try it yourself, go ahead and work through this problem. If you want to follow along with me on the board, you can do that too. So I'm going to go ahead and do it up on the board if you want to follow. Distance formula, we're going to plug in a value. So I'm going to start with -1 minus 1. And then I'm going to have my y values. So 4 minus -2 would be 4 plus 2. Remember with the distance formula, those are squared. So I used this point and the center. I used the -1, 4 point. You could have used the 3, -8. -1 minus 1 is -2 squared is 4. And then 6 squared is 36, so you get the square root of 40. Square root of 40 can be broken down as 2 square roots of 10. So that would be the radius. So I have a center and I have a radius. Now I can plug into the formula. X minus 1 squared, y plus 2 squared equals 2 square roots of 10 squared. Again, you have to expand and then put in the general form. So x squared minus 2x plus 1 plus y squared plus 4y plus 4 equals, when you square 2 square roots of 2, you get 4 times 10. And again, put it in the correct form. So x squared plus y squared minus 2x plus 4y. Subtract the 40 over. And that is your general form. So if you were solving on your own, make sure you get the same general form. Don't forget you do have this 1 over here. The 1 plus the 4 is 5. So when you subtract 40 over, that's how you get negative 35. That 1 is, you might forget about over there. But. Yes?
Do you even have to simplify the square root of 40?
Let's see. You could have left it, but then whenever you subtract it over, you would have some 4 minus the square root of 40. So to get it into this form of just C, technically you should simplify that, so you just get a number value here. Numerically, if you would actually calculate it, is it the same value? Yes, it is. According to the general form, though, you don't exactly have it in general form yet. Okay. Any other questions? All right, I was going to go on today, but we don't have a lot of time left in class, so we are just going to start with the next page tomorrow. Okay, so that's all we're going to do for today.